Hello and welcome to C++ Weekly. In this episode, I want to talk about my 35 years of game development attempts, and just saying that out loud kind of makes me feel old, as it probably should. Around 1990 is when I first started trying to play with some sort of game development thing. I've been programming for too long. I basically started programming in 1985 when I was 7 years old. So this has been a considerable portion of my life. It can argue I've been programming for 40 years now. This episode is sponsored by JetBrains, and I wanted to let you know that I do personally use CLion in my work. I find the refactoring tools to be particularly valuable. The safe delete feature has saved me a ton of time when I've been doing refactoring on large projects. And great news, everyone! As of May 7th of this year, JetBrains has decided to make CLion free for non-commercial use. Be sure to check out the video description for more details on that. I don't really remember a part of my life before I was programming, but interestingly, I didn't actually start out interested in writing games like so many programmers did. I actually was working on application software. Now, I remember it was probably about 1988 that I started working on this thing that I had dubbed APAC, for All Programs Are Connected, and the idea was that I was going to make some sort of basically Microsoft Office or something like that. This was before this was a normal thing, but I wanted to be able to have a calculator and, be able to go from the calculator to do whatever. And my brother gave me lots of advice, and I learned a lot of things from him. He was the one who first had the Commodore 64 and taught me these things. And in a way, he caused my brain damage that I have today from all of these years of working in computers. And just for the record, sometimes my family does watch these videos, and I know sometimes my brother's children watch these videos, and I did actually blame him for causing this to me last time I saw the kids, so they won't be surprised at any of this. So I don't know, why did I want to make an office suite? I don't know. But I really wanted to start making money developing software. So the very first thing that I did was this animal name game thing. I don't know if you've ever done something like this, like on a road trip or something, where someone will say the name of a thing, and then you have to say something that starts with the last letter of that thing. So you might have something like this. I would say aardvark, and then you would come back with kangaroo, because that starts with a K, and then I would come back with, octopus, and you would come back with salamander. And you're not allowed to repeat the name of an animal, and you just do this until no one can come up with an answer anymore. So I wrote a game for this. Again, in Commodore 64 BASIC, and I submitted this thing. I submitted this to a magazine called Compute's Gazette. I sent it in, and you were supposed to send a return address envelope if you wanted them to actually mail the thing back to you. It had to have a floppy of the source code that you wanted published, and this would be in the back of the magazine kind of thing, for anyone who remembers that. They rejected it. They said it was too hard, basically. It was too hard in that the computer always had a perfect answer back, until the point when the computer ran out of answers, because it had a small database of animal names that you had to type in when you first entered this program into your computer. And it was also rejected for basically not being complete enough. It's obviously got a limited database of animal names, so you might know a legitimate animal name that the program didn't know, and it would tell you that's not a legitimate animal name. You would get that rejected by the game engine, and you didn't know what the actual answer would be. So this didn't go anywhere, but this was in about 1990. This was my first attempt to try to get something published. The second attempt was this game called Stan Cornell that I worked on with my cousin Sophia. And I believe she and I have talked about this at some point on some other video that we've done together in the past. And this was in about 1994. This is a top-down RPG style game. This was written in QuickBasic, which, if you're familiar, is actually slightly different from QBasic. Both were Microsoft products. QBasic shipped with DOS 6. Before that, you had GW Basic. QuickBasic was a compiled version of BASIC that had a little bit more features. And we were writing direct to the VGA display. Now, the source code for this thing has not survived. Up to this point, we're on projects where the source code has not survived. But just because the source code didn't survive doesn't mean we can't play the game. We still have the binary for this game, which is amazing. Now, Sophia and I have made an effort of making sure that this binary actually stays around and still executes. I don't know if she still has a copy. I've got multiple copies of it on various backups all over the place. And we can run it. And I have to remember what I'm doing here. Okay, so Stan run, and then I'm going to execute this map called John 1. Now, this was the last work that she did, and I've played some video of this before on the channel way back in the day, but we have a little bit of a top-down scrolling kind of thing, and we did some proof of concept that you can move around in this map, and we've got various icons, things that stop our movement forward, whatever. And she did, I'm trying to find the portion of the map that I'm looking for right now. Where did it go? She got some basic animation working, and I'm going to see how well I can actually zoom this thing in, but you might be able to see that those candles are very slightly flickering. There's animation. That is the extent of the animation. This was really at the beginning of when I and she were really talking about, what would it be like to become an actual programmer who is being paid to do things, maybe starting our own business together and whatever. And those things never really happened, but that's 1994. So this is, I would say, well, it's at least the second serious attempt of doing something, although none of these were ever very complicated. The next one was Tic-Tac-Toe for Palm OS. And this was in about the year 2000, 2001. Interestingly, this actually was a commercial success. It might be hard to believe that I wrote a tic-tac-toe game that ended up becoming a commercial success, but I will show you. This is on the Wayback Machine. You can see my old website. And there we go. There's the graphic loading. This was the graphics for my tic-tac-toe game. And you could play tic-tac-toe against the machine. It had different difficulty levels. I implemented these difficulty levels as a percentage of stupidity. The idea was that it always knew the correct next move. Tic-tac-toe is a fully solved game. That's not difficult. But if you didn't put it on impossible mode, it would basically roll a die and it would say, well, there's a 10% chance that I'm going to make the wrong move. And if it made the wrong move, because that die turned up poorly for it, then it would make some random move that didn't necessarily make sense. Definitely not the impossible move. Now this thing has had its source code survive, and let's make sure we get a link to it real quick. Well, I can't find the source code for it, but it should be somewhere. Now you might ask, how did this tic-tac-toe game actually become a commercial success? And part of the reason. It had a tile flipping solitaire mode, and I don't know for sure, but I like to feel like I invented this particular type of minigame puzzle that is now a mainstay in like literally every puzzle game, where it would randomize all of the tiles on the screen between X's and O's, and then you would have to tap on the X and the O, and it would flip the adjacent ones until you got the whole thing back to all X's or all O's or whatever, and then it would give you a little animation, and you could play that for a surprisingly long time. I am perhaps stretching the definition of commercial success a little bit when I say it was a commercial success, but it made about $10 to maybe $20 per month. So why would I call this a commercial success? This thing paid my hosting fees for about 6 years, so it was self-sustaining. I didn't lose money off of this hobby. Now, the next several were a bunch of things that really didn't go anywhere, except I would say this thing that was called the Empty Crate game engine. There's a bunch of other ones. You can look in the video description here, but I don't even have screenshots of this thing that survive. It was a Drupal plugin that used ActionScript with Flash to be able to make tiny action-based adventure games. And I actually did like a series of games on this that were all hosted on my website. That was like Underground City or something like that. What did I call it? I forget what it was. No, Hidden City, something like that. I forget. Uncovered City? Maybe was it called Uncovered City? I don't know, something. Anyhow, you are working your way down below your house into some city that is left over from a previous society that is long and forgotten, and you start exploring down there. I did this, like, I did like weekly things for a little while. They never really went anywhere, but it was a fun thing to work on. Now, what made this unique is it was designed to be collaborative. Because this thing was hosted on Drupal, you could reuse other people's assets, but no one ever did. So it didn't really go anywhere. That's fine. That brings us back to today, basically. I have been on this channel, you can go and look at all the various game development projects that I have done. But let's start with ChiScript in 2009. Secretly, virtually every project that I work on my own is with this idea that someday I'm going to complete this Stan-like game, and it will actually be a playable game. So ChiScript in 2009 was actually my attempt to create a scripting language that I might use in this game. And then I have this, like, I don't know, game engine from 2015. I don't even know what it did. There will be source code to it. And then I had the C++ weekly game project. And about 2020, I started that thing over COVID. That didn't go anywhere. And then I had the simple game from 2021. This was a Counter-64 game written in C++20, and even just trying to get that thing to run today would be difficult, but I will link to the videos for those projects as well so that you can come back and look at them. Now let's get to travels, and this is really the point of this video. This was 2023 to today. I'm kind of working on the things behind this. This uses Cons Expert for scripting. This is my latest scripting engine that I've mentioned a couple times on the channel, and my own custom tile-based game engine. And I use the tiled file format. for letting you design your own game maps. And I have my own custom ray casting engine, which you may have seen in other videos. This thing was originally prototyped in Python. That is its own project as well. So each of these things are their own projects. There's the tiled game engine, and then there's the raycasting engine that it can call out to. And there's my ConsXpr scripting language, which is its own thing as well. So let's go ahead and just play through tiled a little bit so you can see what it looks like. There is actually like a whole plot and a backstory here that I've been working on. We're not going to go into that at the moment. But you can see that you have your character here, the one with the staff who can walk around. And if you bump into something that's interactable, you can interact with the thing in some way. You can possibly, no, that's just a test for an animated character right there. You can wander around. And if you read the intro, then you might see that there was a secret alley back here. And I've got my raycasting engine. And this all runs in the terminal window. And I have to remember my own maze. I just walked in a circle. A little bit of depth with the color going on, and you know, it works. There we go, there's the exit. And when you exit out the other side of the maze here, you will be in a different part of the game map. And there's another house over here that you can walk in and you can interact with the person. Maybe? No. Well, I need to do more of the dialogue and stuff. That is my latest example here of trying to work on a game engine. And this is all open source. It's all written in C++23. It's all in constant flux everywhere. You can see here this ability to load game maps and be able to define constants and define actions when you step on certain locations. And yes, this is an S-expression based language, so you have to get a little bit familiar with prefix notation, but prefix notation actually makes a lot of sense for those of us who are used to making function calls. So the function call is set location action, the first parameter is game, second parameter main, etc. We only think this looks weird when we're adding numbers together. We don't think it looks weird when we're calling functions. I need to clean up a little bit of this, but this is the entire game described in here for character interaction and examining things and whatever. So you can see set action in the home map for examine sword. And so this examine sword location is actually set in the home map here that's declared on line 3. And then you're given different actions that can be enabled in different ways. So I can say this is the action, or I can say this is a test. So I must have previously looked at the sword to be allowed to examine the sword. Well, anyhow, whatever. It's all proof of concept kinds of things. So that is the end of this story here. This is my 35 years so far of game development attempts and playing around, and I hope you found this at least moderately interesting. This episode's been on my to-do list for several years to work on, and you know, I just gonna say, just you never know where things might go. Like, did I expect that making a tic-tac-toe game and putting it for sale on Palm OS would have earned me a few dollars? I did not. That thing probably earned me a couple $100, and like I said, paid my web hosting fees. And working on these projects always gives me more to talk about at conferences and stuff. I don't necessarily talk about it in the context of the fact that I've been trying to make a game engine of some sort for 35 years, but I do talk about it in the context of the things that I have learned about C++ along the way. So thank you for watching this episode of C++ Weekly. Be sure to subscribe, and I will catch you later.